So we've just arrived at a very chilly Bergen-Belsen memorial. It was the old Nazi concentration camp. We're just going to find our way now to the entrance and just go pay our respects and have a little look at the history behind this horrific place. Just entered through the gates now of Bergen-Belsen, and the first thing it strikes you with is just the size, the sheer size of these gates, the walls, and the actual footpath ahead of you, which you're just going to see now leading us towards like the Prisoner of War Cemetery, the Anne Frank Memorial. As I mentioned earlier, just about the scale of this place. This is a biggish concentration camp, not as big as it was in comparison to like a Birkenau, Auschwitz-Birkenau, but you can just see the scale over there. There's like a memorial to the Polish victims, there's memorials to Anne Frank somewhere over there, but the area is just absolutely massive. It's just, you can't fathom quite what it would have been like in the war for those victims. We've just seen, as you may just see behind me there, this like mound here, and the mound behind which I'm just about to show you. This here, in German, it says, "Hier ruhen 1,000 Tote, April 1945. Now this is the scene where one of the mass graves, it said there was about 13 mass graves in this area, and this is obviously where they, once it was liberated, they found 1,000 of dead bodies just in that area, that one mass grave. Leah's over there now looking at another mass grave, and I think there's 2,500 over there. It's a lot bigger area. The atrocities here are just unbelievable. Leah over there now just looking at this one. This is a lot bigger scale. It goes all the way over here, over there into the far corner, and that was where 2,500 were found dead. This is just one of the many little grave areas in the area. These are from people who knew the victims. It said there was only about 10,000 victims actually known or named. So the families of those have been lucky enough to be able to sort of be able to get a headstone and somewhere to come and visit the family. But all of these all died in 1945. Some Hebrew writing there, so obviously the Jewish, a lot of Polish names. So we've just left that little particular cemetery, and there's another one here. You may just see the headstones dotted around all over the place. The big one over there is the Polish memorial. There's a Jewish memorial just there in the centre of shot. There's another mass grave here, another mass grave just over there. This one had 800 deaths in it, and such a small area, you can imagine just 800 people there. It's just shocking to realise kind of what happened on here, and when you see this you realise how big of a scale the Nazi killing machine was. We know Anne Frank's grave is somewhere in this area. So this is the Jewish memorial. You can see the Jewish Star of David ahead, the Hebrew writing there, and then we've just seen in the background this centre one there, that is the resting place of Anne Frank. So a little bit about Anne Frank. Most people who read about the war and know about the war will have heard of Anne Frank and her diary. She was a Dutch woman, a Jewish Dutch woman from Amsterdam, who famously wrote a diary which her father published after her death here at Bergen-Belsen. It sold over 30 million copies worldwide in over 67 different languages, and she's probably one of, if not the most famous victim of the Holocaust. And just by looking at the grave now, you can see that there is actually a lot of like flowers and bits and pieces there, whether it be from family or just people who wanted to pay the respects to her. This particular headstone here is a memorial from the President of Israel. You can see at the bottom there, President von Israel. That is basically a memorial there again from the Israeli president. One of the things we do find, or we have found, is the age of the victims. You can see the dates of birth on here. There's a couple over there in the 60s. The majority, there's one there, Gregory Kramer from Budapest, who was deported. In 1929 he was born, 1945 he was killed, which means he was 16 years old. That is just unbelievable. So yeah, this is the grave of Anne Frank and her sister Margot. You can see there's a lot of tributes here. Flowers, people leaving little notes, candles. Obviously one of the most, if not the most famous victim of the Holocaust. We've come into this more modern, like steel building with a roof, and there's this little tribute here behind me. It's showing a couple of the victims down there, which I'll show you in a second. This man on the left, Walter Kingsley, He survived Bergen-Belsen and he actually died in London in 2021, so he was one of the few to escape. This area is like a little memorial. There's a letter there to Anne Frank and her sister. There's stones written, there's different little maps everywhere, there's little flags all over. As you can see, letters here, just a simple one which I think sums everything up. Basically, rest in peace. What's this one? We will never forget what happened. And also, I believe this is something we could all learn from. But as human beings, I'm not sure we actually do learn from it. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but there seems to be, there's an artillery range or a battery over there. And I'm assuming they're doing testing or something like that, or training, because you can hear it throughout here. And how very like sort of poignant. You can just imagine what would be going on around here in the war. Now this cross where Leah is was erected by the Polish victims when this camp was liberated. These four little plaques on the ground are all specifying something different. The far one is all the Turkish victims who were killed here. The second one is all the Dutch. This one, the third one, is saying about Jews, Gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals. They're all in this area. And then this one here is saying about 15,000 Polish men, women and children who were killed here in Bergen-Belsen, and the ashes of who remain here. So this is obviously a big area where a lot of these victims were killed and basically just dumped by the Nazis, which is awful, such an awful part of history. You realise how big this place is when there's little signs here which are just saying historical path to the Bergen-Belsen prisoner of war cemetery, and it's a kilometre in this direction, so that gives you an idea of how big it actually is. A little bit further on as well, there was a train with a train track that's actually in the town of Bergen. And that was like the last stop for a lot of these victims, where they got off and was shipped here and then unfortunately met their end. This big outline you can see here was the actual crematorium. The information plaque here is just saying about it, showing you what it looked like when it was liberated. Was also saying that towards the end of the liberation there was that many bodies that they just ended up having huge fires which were at the crematorium. They're just burning these bodies. When it was liberated there was 10,000 bodies lying around, totally in different states. It's just unbelievable. But this is a really interesting thing in the fact that the top part of this writing is in German, the bottom is in English, so you can actually visit this and take in all the information which you wouldn't normally be able to do, because we've been to a few places and it's mainly all in French and German, which we missed out on. If you can hear that, that does sound awful. Now I'm not sure if it's something industrial or if it is the army barracks, but it's certainly sort of unnerving. This grave here, the translation is, "Here lies an unknown number killed." So that to me suggests that that could be ashes or unrecognisable states, so they're not quite sure. It just gives you an idea that even though these figures around the camp on the information placards saying about the number of, they are estimated deaths, they're never going to be truly accurate when there was burning so many bodies. How can you actually get a scale of what actually was the total amount killed here? But I mean, the scale, just the scale of this place is, it's unbelievable. We've just been past the former women's camp area. We're now heading towards the prison of war area, and the sizes are just huge. Each bit is separate from the other, divided by bits of forest and tree line. This is the path now we're leading to prisoner of war cemetery. The placard, the information placard over there was saying that it was originally built for 1,000 prisoners of war, basically graves. By the end of 1942, when it was constructed in 1941, there's actually 19,580 dead in this area. It said most died from malnutrition, illness and disease, but a lot also were killed by the Nazis in various areas around this camp. Mainly Soviets. There was a few Italians and a few other nationalities, but it was mainly the Soviets and the Russians who died basically in this area. And this is quite a big area, I think, from what it's saying. And then as we go further around, we're going to go to the Memorial Museum / Centre. We found out what the banging was. This sign here is saying military security area, training area, firing and exercising, danger to life. So anywhere from that point, this way is still the route to the Soviet Memorial. Seems a bit strange kind of walking if this is the boundary, but there is a sign actually further back saying do not touch any of the artillery or any rounds you may see lying around. So they must obviously come through your training, and that explains what the bagging was, which is a bit more relaxing, understanding what it is, but we'll just stick to the signs and head where we're supposed to head. In the previous image, it just showed you some of the prisoners of war with a cart carrying the dead. We've just walked the actual trail which they did, coming down through these forests. So we've got quite a long way. It said they used to stop several times because they were so weak. Some even died on the way. But like most places we've found when we've come to like these concentration camps, these areas are so far away from anywhere. Like this is a kilometre away from the main camp, deep in the forest areas you can see around me. They knew exactly what they were doing. Really, really sneaky, really, really crafty, and it's just unbelievable really. I keep saying unbelievable, but I really genuinely cannot sort of fathom quite what went on here and quite how big these places are. So this is the Soviet prisoner of war camp or graveyard. All these plaques you see behind me, I've got about 50 or 60 names in, and all these are done by the young children of the Saxony area in the schools to signify and remember the people who died here, who they recognise. It said a lot of Soviet files was found since the war, and they have these names. So as a mark of respect and to give these people a name and a meaning, this is what the school children have done. So yes, these areas, these are the areas of the schools which have done them, and these are what the children of the local schools have done, giving the name to the dead here. Well, as far as we're aware, we're coming towards the end of the sort of Bergen-Belsen camp now. There's a museum, or like a history museum, a bit further up near the entrance, which we're going to go into, and just as if to symbolise what this place is, there's like one final mass grave just ahead of us. So no matter where you are, and this is a big, big area. I know I keep reiterating that, but it's unbelievably massive. Just how widespread the killing was in this area. I mean, over there is where a lot of the prison camps were. Further in the distance, I'd say probably a quarter of a mile down there, is the main entrance to the camp. We're in the exhibition museum now. You see this big concrete plaza. There's various items all over. This bit's like an introduction to the beginning of it and telling you the stories of the victims here. So behind me in this big long wall here is all the ID cards and the prisoners which was brought here. These ones are all Soviets and Russians. This is the details, the dates of birth. This is basically if they had typhoid or any sort of like medical records, all very young, but this goes on as far as you can see. This particular board here is all about the mass graves, showing you quite graphic footage. This is the second floor of the museum and exhibition, and this is basically saying what Bergen-Belsen was after the liberation. It became a displaced persons camp for Jews, Czech Republics, Hungarians, all different people. Well, that is our sort of day at Bergen-Belsen over and done with. It's been quite a sort of harrowing day, I'd say. You don't realise the scale of it, you don't realise what had gone on. This exhibition actually really sort of made it hit home. A lot of pictures of actually the dead bodies and the things what was found on the liberation. So if you're ever in the area, I would definitely recommend coming just to see actually what's gone on in this area altogether, just because we can't let this die out. We're coming to the end now of our tour of Bergen-Belsen. We've just driven to the town of Bergen now. And we're going to go see the old ramp where the train stopped, where the prisoners of war got off, and then we'll march down probably the mile or two to the actual camp of Bergen-Belsen. It is an army area as well. The other side of this fence is a military zone which is restricted, so this footpath is just taking us alongside it to the ramp where I think there is a carriage there to show you what the prisoners used to travel on. Not sure if it's an original or not, but there might be some information there. So this is the famous sign towards Bergen-Belsen. You may just read that there. So this is a replica of the carriages which were used to transport the prisoners from various places in the country to Bergen-Belsen. This was the last stop, as you'll have just seen on the sign. It is the last stop, there is no escape from here. That is just barbaric.